Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Politics Now. We're talking about modern politics and modern America. And today we're going to be discussing why Ukraine might be one of the biggest issues for Joe Biden's campaign in 2024. So, yeah, let's get into that. So, Ukraine has been a very divisive issue for Democrats and specifically Joe Biden for the past couple of years, from when it started in 2022 and until now. So, they have sent a lot of money to Ukraine, and a lot of people don't really like that they sent $75 billion for assistance to Ukraine. And it's not a very good look, especially since they have not had exactly the best policies regarding foreign affairs and especially wars, where you had the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which, looking at his approval rating, yeah, it pretty much destroyed any a remaining approval from him, where that's he pretty much has never gone back to his approval rating being higher than his disapproval because of Afghanistan. And it's a pretty similar thing with Ukraine, where at the start of the war, it he started funding them and his disapproval rating kept rising and rising, and it has still not gone between about six 6 points disapproval to 15 points disapproval, and approval rating has still not gone up above disapproval, which, if you have that, and it's a pretty wide area, because now it's like 13 points for the difference between approval and disapproval. If you have that and you're trying to run for re-election, you're not going to get the presidency. And you need that in a lot of these swing states, which a lot of these swing states do not really like you at all. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, they all don't really like Joe Biden, and Joe Biden is very disapproved in a lot of those swing states, which you need to win the presidency. And especially if you focus on Ukraine, because what else does he have to focus on? Pretty much everything else, if he focused on that, it would just be exposing his failure. So he's likely to just focus on Ukraine, which isn't a good idea, because not focusing on it is just sort of tiptoeing around the position, and a lot of your opponents can just say, he's not even talking about the issues that really matter, he's only obsessed with Ukraine. But talking about it, you just recognize your own failure, because there's no good things to talk about with stuff like the economy. And a lot of Americans are going to be concerned about the economy, and that's kind of what they're voting on in 2024, because inflation is still extremely high, and it has not really gone down for the past few years, where it's still at like 11% or 4%, where inflation is still at record high levels, and somewhat even some of them are even higher than the 2008 recession, where inflation is going to be the thing that people are going to be voting on in 2024. And Joe Biden doesn't really have any pros to lean on, because he's handled it so poorly that he can't really lean on, oh, I've had a great economy, because he hasn't had any great economy. He has had a absolutely terrible economy with really high inflation, and honestly, it's not going to look good for Joe Biden, because he's really going to focus on Ukraine, and he's going to tiptoe around the issue, and that's going to be exposed, where he's not discussing the actual issues that people care about, because they're such a failure that why even talk about it, because if you talk about it, it's not going to really help you in the long term or during your presidential campaign. So you can't really talk about it, but if you don't talk about it, that just means that you're tiptoeing around the issue, and people are going to expose you for that. Where Joe Biden, Ukraine is basically the only thing that he can talk about, but it's avoiding everything else, where everything else has been a failure. And Ukraine being the only thing that you can talk about in your own campaign is not very good, because Ukraine is a very divisive issue. Not a lot of people support it, and a lot of people are not really impressed or approving of sending $75 billion to Ukraine. And a lot of the politicians are, but a lot of the people don't like that the politicians are basically disconnected from the people who vote for them, where you have these absolute rhinos, the Democrats, they're all joining together to funnel a bunch of money to Ukraine, where a lot of these people probably are going to get voted out and be replaced by some other politicians because voters don't really like sending a bunch of money to a foreign country that a lot of them don't even really care about. And they mostly don't like Russia, which is pretty much the main reason why we're sending money to them. But a lot of them don't even like Ukraine. So if you have this much of a disapproval and you sent this much money to Ukraine, which is quite a bit, and you have high inflation, what are you going to talk about? Because anything that you talk about, it's going to be avoiding issues that you haven't handled that well, and the thing that you're talking about, you also haven't handled that well. So Joe Biden talking about anything, he's screwed, and he can barely talk about anything because have you seen him talk? It's just embarrassing. And his campaign is completely dead now, even before it started, because you can't talk about any of the major issues because you've done terrible on them. You can only really talk about Ukraine, but not a lot of people agree with your strategy and how much money you're sending to them. And really, you're just going to have to hide in the basement, which you can't do this cycle because people have seen what you actually do. You can't play the moderate Democrat anymore and the friendly grandpa because people have seen what you will actually do as president. And the 2020 strategy isn't going to work because nobody buys into that crap anymore. And Trump has pulled above you for a while where it's not that likely that you're going to get a re-election with even a even a landslide. That's pretty much out of the question, but it will either be a tough fight or you're going to lose, where you are so disapproved of and have an economy that is absolutely in the gutter and a lot of people are feeling a lot poorer, where the average voter does not like you, does not like your economic handling, does not like your foreign policy strategy, and still remembers stuff like Afghanistan, which Afghanistan combined with Ukraine, that's all of his foreign policy. That's the only thing he can point to for foreign policy, which is also a very important part of a presidential campaign, especially now where you have a bunch of enemies of America and people want to know how are you going to deal with these people. And Trump has a proven record where he's had a successful foreign policy, but Joe Biden has Afghanistan and Ukraine to talk about, which people absolutely despise his withdrawal from Afghanistan, so you can't talk about that. But everyone else who is your enemy will definitely talk about that and point that out. It's not like people. It's not like they're gonna let people forget your absolute botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. But also, Ukraine is also a very divisive issue where you are going to lose a lot of support from these independents, which you need to win the election, because a lot of independents don't like the Ukraine war and they just want to see it get over soon. And if you have your main opponent saying that I'll end this war within a couple hours or a couple days, it's not going to really work out for you because a lot of those independents are going to start supporting your opponent because they want their solutions met and they see that you can't meet those solutions, but this other candidate is promising that, well, they're going to go with the other candidate and you're going to lose the independent support, which you needed to win in 2020, and you won that, but now it's pretty much impossible for you to win that because they know how you handle things and you can't play the moderate. So Joe Biden 2024 is pretty much dead. It's more alive than Ron DeSantis for his 2024 run, but honestly, you're screwed. Just give up. Anyways, leave your comments down below if you disagree with me at all. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.